The moment I knew my older sister had been living inside my apartment while I was at work wasn't when I found the wet towel draped over my shower rod. It wasn't when I noticed the couch cushions pressed into shapes my body never made. It was when I opened my bedroom closet and smelled her perfume on my clothes, that sharp floral scent she'd worn since college, clinging to fabrics she had no business touching. People say family looks out for each other. But what happens when looking out for you becomes looking through your things, sleeping in your bed, and treating your home like an extension of theirs? Because by the time I finally set my trap, my sister had already taken everything but my name. I should back up. Growing up in a small house outside of Richmond, Virginia, I learned early that space was something you earned, not something you were given. My mother worked double shifts at the hospital and kept the house running with military precision. She loved us, I never doubted that, but love in our family came wrapped in obligation. You shared everything: your room, your food, your time, your silence when silence was required. My older sister, Danielle, was 4 years ahead of me and operated like a second mother nobody asked for. She decided what I wore to school. She read my diary and told our mother what was inside. She borrowed my things without asking and returned them damaged or not at all. When I complained, my mother would sigh and say, "She's your sister, Nora. That's what sisters do." My father had left when I was 6, and his absence became the crack through which Danielle poured herself into every corner of my life. Without him there to balance things, my mother leaned on Danielle for everything. And Danielle, in return, leaned on me. Not for support, for control. By the time I turned 26, I had a decent job as a paralegal at a mid-size firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. I had saved for over a year to afford my own place, a one-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of a gated building with a courtyard and a keypad entry. The day I moved in, I stood in the empty living room and pressed my palms against the walls like I was checking if they were real. No one else's fingerprints, no one else's expectations, just mine. I bought a small succulent for the windowsill and named it Quiet because that's what the apartment gave me for the first time in my life. I made one mistake early on. Danielle had driven down from Richmond to help me move, and during the chaos of unpacking, she asked for a spare key. "Just in case," she said. "What if you lock yourself out?" "What if there's an emergency?" I hesitated. Something in my chest tightened, a reflex built from years of knowing what giving Danielle access to anything actually meant. But my mother was on the phone that evening, and when I mentioned Danielle's request, she jumped in immediately. "Give her the key, Nora. She's family. Don't be difficult." So I handed it over, and for 3 months, nothing happened. I almost convinced myself I'd been paranoid. Then small things started shifting. I came home one Tuesday to find my kitchen sponge damp. I hadn't used it that morning. The next week, the pillows on my bed were arranged differently, stacked instead of side by side the way I always left them. A banana I hadn't bought sat on the counter, already browning. I told myself I was imagining things. Maybe I had forgotten. Maybe I was tired. Maybe the building maintenance had come in for something. But deep down, I knew. I had spent 18 years learning the texture of Danielle's presence, and my apartment was starting to feel like her fingerprint was pressed into every surface. I changed my apartment password on the keypad, chose a new 6-digit code, and didn't tell anyone. For 2 weeks, the strange signs stopped. No damp sponges, no rearranged pillows, no phantom groceries. I exhaled. I slept through the night without waking to check the front door. Then one Friday, I came home from work and found my door unlocked, not broken into, unlocked from the inside. I stepped in carefully, heart hammering, and saw Danielle's jacket tossed across my kitchen chair. Her shoes were by the door. A pot of soup was simmering on my stove. She walked out of my bathroom, drying her hands on one of my towels, and smiled like she'd just done me the world's biggest favor. "Hey, I made Mom's chicken soup. You sounded tired on the phone last night." I stood there, keys still in my hand. "How did you get in?" She shrugged. "I told the building manager I was your sister and that you gave me permission. He was super nice about it." My blood went cold. I had changed the code specifically to keep her out, and she had simply walked around it by charming a stranger into letting her in. "Danielle, you can't just show up inside my apartment." She rolled her eyes. "Nora, relax. I'm not a burglar. I'm your sister." "That's not the point." "Then what is the point? I drove 2 hours to do something nice for you, and you're acting like I committed a crime." That night, after she left, I sat on my kitchen floor with the soup still cooling on the stove and called the building manager. I was polite but firm. No one is authorized to enter my unit. Not my sister, not my mother, not anyone. If someone claims I gave permission, they're lying. Please confirm this in writing. He apologized, said he understood, said it wouldn't happen again. I printed his email confirmation and pinned it to my fridge. 2 weeks passed. Then I came home and found my bathroom reorganized. My towels, which I always folded in thirds and stacked by color, were now rolled into tight cylinders and stuffed into a basket I didn't own. My shampoo bottles had been rearranged by height. A new bath mat sat on the floor, still creased from its packaging. And on the mirror, written in what I recognized as Danielle's lipstick, were the words, "You're welcome." I felt my hands shake. Not from fear, but from something deeper. From the exhaustion of knowing that no locked door, no changed code, no polite conversation would ever be enough. I called Danielle. She picked up on the first ring, cheerful, unbothered. "Did you like the bath mat? I saw it at Target and thought of you. How did you get in this time?" A pause. "Your neighbor, Mrs. Whitfield, sweet lady. She had a key from when you asked her to water your plants, remember? I told her I was surprising you for your birthday. My birthday was 4 months ago. Well, she didn't know that." I hung up. I went next door and asked Mrs. Whitfield, as gently as I could, to return the spare key I'd given her. She looked confused and a little hurt, but she handed it back. I thanked her and closed the door. Then I called a locksmith to install a deadbolt that could only be opened from inside or with a key that I and only I possessed. I changed the keypad code again. I also changed every password on my laptop, my email, my banking apps, and my cloud storage. If Danielle could talk her way past a building manager and a neighbor, I wasn't going to leave anything to chance. For exactly 11 days, my apartment stayed untouched. I started to believe the deadbolt had solved everything. Then I came home on a Wednesday evening and found my laptop open on the coffee table. I always closed it and slid it into my desk drawer before leaving. Always. It was one of those rituals that made me feel like my space was sealed before I walked out the door. But there it was. Open, screen glowing, logged into my email. And in my inbox was a draft that hadn't been there that morning, a message addressed to my ex-boyfriend Derek, written from my account. It read, "I've been thinking about you. Can we talk?" I hadn't spoken to Derek in over a year. I didn't want to. Danielle knew this. Danielle had also, during one of her visits, watched me type my laptop password when I thought she wasn't paying attention. I deleted the draft. I changed my password again. Then I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the wall for what felt like an hour. My skin felt too tight. My apartment, the one place that was supposed to be entirely mine, now felt like a stage someone else was directing. Every drawer, every screen, every lock had been breached. Not by a stranger. By someone who smiled while doing it and called it love. The next morning, I scheduled a session with a therapist I'd been seeing on and off since moving to Charlotte. Her name was Dr. Linden. I sat across from her and laid everything out. Every sponge, every towel, every lipstick message, every bypass. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned forward and said something that rearranged my entire understanding of what had been happening. "Nora, what you're describing isn't closeness. It's occupation. Your sister isn't visiting your apartment, she's claiming it. And every time she bypasses a boundary you set, she's telling you that your autonomy doesn't exist unless she approves it." I blinked. So what do? I've changed the locks. I've changed the codes. I've told the building manager. I've taken back the spare key. "And she's gotten in every single time," Dr. Linden said, "which means the locks aren't the problem. Proximity is the problem. As long as she can reach your door, she will find a way through it. You're saying I need to move. I'm saying you need distance she can't charm her way across." I left that session with a single terrifying clarity. If I stayed in that apartment, Danielle would never stop. Not because she was evil, but because she genuinely didn't see what she was doing as wrong. In her mind, she was being a good sister. And no amount of new locks or hard conversations was going to rewire 26 years of a dynamic our mother had built and blessed. So I started looking. Quietly. I told no one, except my 2 closest friends, Marcus and Priya, who had watched this situation unfold for months with increasing alarm. I searched for apartments in a different part of Charlotte, somewhere with no connection to anyone in my family. I found a building on the south side, a newer complex with a staffed front desk, security cameras on every floor, a fob entry system that logged every access, and a strict policy against granting entry to anyone not on the lease. I toured it on my lunch break, signed the lease the same afternoon, and paid the deposit with money I'd been quietly setting aside. The move happened on a Sunday night. Marcus drove a rented van. Priya packed boxes with ruthless efficiency, labeling each one in a shorthand only we understood. We started at 10 p.m. and finished by 3 in the morning. I left behind the bath mat Danielle had bought me. I left behind the basket she'd stuffed my towels into. I left behind every trace of her except the memories, and even those I planned to sort through later with Dr. Linden's help. The last thing I did before locking the door for the final time was slide my key under the building manager's door in a sealed envelope. No forwarding address, no explanation. At my new apartment, the night concierge scanned my ID, handed me a fob, and said, "Welcome home, Miss Calloway." I almost cried. Not because the words were extraordinary, but because they were simple, and because no one in my family would ever hear them directed at this address. For the first 5 days, I kept my phone on silent. I cooked meals I actually wanted to eat. I rearranged my closet without wondering if someone would rearrange it back. I slept so deeply that I dreamed for the first time in months. The silence in that apartment wasn't empty. It was full of me. On the 6th morning, I turned my phone back on. The screen erupted like a dam breaking. 47 missed calls, over 100 text messages, voicemails that started confused and quickly escalated to frantic. Danielle's messages formed a timeline of panic. "Hey, tried to stop by today. Your code doesn't work." Then, "Nora, the building manager says you moved out?" Then, "Mom is freaking out. Where are you?" Then, in all caps, "Nora, answer your phone right now." My mother's messages were shorter but heavier. "Call me immediately. This isn't funny. I'm calling the police." And then the one that made my stomach drop. A text from Danielle sent 2 days earlier. "We're going to your apartment. If you won't answer, we'll find you ourselves." I scrolled further and found what I'd been dreading. A social media post from my mother's account with a photo of me from last Christmas captioned, "My daughter Nora is missing. She hasn't been heard from in days. Please share. Charlotte, NC area." I set the phone down and pressed my hands flat against the kitchen counter. Breathed in, breathed out. Then, my phone buzzed again. "Unknown number." I picked up. "Is this Nora Calloway?" "Yes. This is Officer Dawson with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. I need to confirm that you're safe." "I'm safe." I moved. "Understood. I'm calling because your family members were involved in a disturbance at your previous address. The current tenants reported a break-in attempt. We need you to come down to the station to clarify a few things." I closed my eyes. "I'll be there within the hour." The fluorescent lights at the precinct buzzed like a headache made audible. A desk officer led me to a conference room at the end of a beige hallway, and when I stepped inside, the scene hit me like a wall. Danielle sat at the table, mascara streaked down both cheeks, her arms crossed so tightly she looked like she was holding herself together by force. My mother sat beside her, clutching a crumpled tissue, her eyes red and swollen. She looked older than I remembered, smaller, as if the past week had compressed her. They both looked up when I walked in, and for a split second, I saw relief flash across their faces before it curdled into something else. "Nora!" My mother stood so fast her chair wobbled. "Oh my God, where have you been? We thought something terrible happened to you." Danielle's voice cracked. "Do you have any idea what we've been through? I haven't slept in 3 days." I stood in the doorway and let the silence hold for a moment. Then I said quietly, "I moved." "You moved?" My mother repeated the words like they were in a foreign language. "Without telling us?" "Yes." "Why?" Danielle whispered. And for the first time I could remember, her voice didn't carry the sharp edge of authority. It carried something closer to genuine confusion. Officer Dawson entered behind me, a calm woman with short gray hair and reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. "Let's all take a seat," she said. "I want to walk through what happened at Miss Calloway's former residence." My mother sat slowly, like the chair might collapse under the weight of what was coming. According to the tenants, Officer Dawson began, 2 women arrived at the unit on Saturday evening. They told the current residents they were family members of the previous tenant and demanded to be let inside. When the tenants refused, one of the women attempted to use a key that no longer worked on the lock. The other tried to reach the balcony from the exterior stairwell. Danielle flinched. I wasn't trying to break in. I thought she was inside. I thought she was hurt. The tenants felt threatened. Officer Dawson continued evenly. They called 911. When officers arrived, both women were still on the property. They were detained and questioned. My mother pressed the tissue to her mouth. We were trying to find our daughter. That's all we were doing. Officer Dawson looked at me. Miss Calloway, can you confirm that you moved out voluntarily and did not inform your family? That's correct. I moved because my sister repeatedly entered my apartment without permission despite multiple requests to stop. She bypassed my building security, used my neighbor's spare key, accessed my laptop, and drafted messages from my email account. I changed my locks, my codes, and my passwords. None of it stopped her. Moving was the only option I had left. The room went quiet. My mother stared at me as if I'd just recited a list of crimes committed by a stranger. Danielle's arms unfolded slowly. I was helping you, Danielle said, but the words came out thin. Everything I did was because I care about you. You reorganized my bathroom and wrote "You're welcome" on my mirror in lipstick, I said. You logged into my email and drafted a message to my ex. You told my neighbor a fake story about my birthday to get a key I'd never authorized you to have. That's not caring, Danielle. That's not even close. I didn't think it was a big deal, she said, but her voice was shrinking. It was a big deal to me. Every single time. My mother leaned forward. Nora, she's your sister. Sisters share things. I don't understand why you had to disappear like a criminal. I'm not the one who got detained by police, Mom. That landed hard. My mother recoiled as if the words had physical weight. Officer Dawson folded her hands on the table. Miss Calloway, given the pattern you've described, I'd recommend formalizing your boundaries through a written agreement. It's not a restraining order. It's a documented understanding that both parties acknowledge and sign. It can be referenced if there are future incidents. Danielle's eyes widened. A written agreement? Like I'm some kind of threat? Like you're someone who has been told no multiple times and hasn't listened, I said. Not cruelly, but clearly. Officer Dawson slid a form across the table. I picked up the pen and wrote 3 conditions in the blank space. 1, you do not visit my home. We meet only in public places. 2, you do not contact my landlord, my neighbors, or anyone associated with my building. 3, you do not access my personal devices, accounts, or mail under any circumstance. My mother read the conditions with trembling lips. This feels like you're punishing us. It's not a punishment, I said. It's a door. You just have to learn to knock. Danielle stared at the paper for a long time. Then she picked up the pen and signed. My mother followed, her signature shaking slightly at the end. When the paper slid back to me and I saw their names on the line beneath my conditions, something inside my chest released. Not joy, not triumph, just space. Space that had been compressed for 26 years finally expanding. My mother whispered, I don't know how to be your mother from a distance. I met her eyes. You can start by trusting me to live without supervision. Officer Dawson nodded. I think that's a good place to leave things for today. I stood, gathered the papers, and walked out of the conference room. Danielle called after me. Nora. I stopped but didn't turn around. I didn't know it felt like that, she said. I swear I didn't know. I let her words sit in the air for a moment. Then I said, now you do. And I walked out of the station into the warm Charlotte evening, the air thick with honeysuckle and the hum of cicadas. The weeks that followed were the quietest of my life. Not empty quiet, alive quiet. I woke up in my apartment every morning knowing that the coffee mugs were where I had placed them. The towels were folded my way. The laptop was in the drawer, closed, untouched. I cooked dinner with the windows open and didn't flinch when I heard footsteps in the hallway because the footsteps always kept going. They were never coming for me. Danielle and I started meeting at a cafe near the University District. Neutral ground. She was awkward at first, overly polite in a way that felt rehearsed. But over time, something genuine began to surface. She started asking questions she'd never asked before. How is work? Do you like your neighborhood? Are you happy? And for the first time, she waited for answers. My mother called once a week, always on Sundays, always brief. She didn't ask where I lived. She didn't push for visits. She talked about her garden, about a coworker who annoyed her, about a recipe she'd tried. Small things, safe things, the kind of conversations I'd always wished we could have. None of it was perfect. Some days, Danielle's old habits flickered. She'd suggest dropping something off at my place, then catch herself and rephrase, "Or I could leave it at the cafe for you." Those moments, the catching and correcting, told me more about her growth than any apology ever could. I still see Dr. Linden. We talk about boundaries not as walls, but as architecture. She once said something that stayed with me. The people who love you will learn the layout of your boundaries and walk comfortably within them. The ones who keep bumping into walls aren't lost. They just haven't decided to respect the floor plan yet. Looking back, leaving wasn't about running away. It was about standing still for the first time and realizing the ground beneath me was mine. My sister still exists in my life, but now she enters it through a door I choose to open. At times I choose, in places where I feel safe. And if you've ever had to fight for the right to feel at home in your own home, if you've ever changed a lock only to have someone talk their way past it, if you've ever wondered whether protecting yourself makes you a bad daughter or a bad sister, I want you to know something. It doesn't. It makes you someone who finally decided that love shouldn't require a spare key. If this story meant something to you, subscribe to Bone Revenge and share your experience in the comments. You'd be surprised how many people are standing on the other side of a door they're scared to lock. Maybe your story is the one that gives them permission.